Basketry, the art of basket making, is among the most ancient of all human handicrafts. Baskets have played vital roles in societies through agricultural, domestic, decorative, and even religious practices. John Rice Irwin, author and founder of the Museum of Appalachia, expressed in his book, Baskets and Basket Makers in Southern Appalachia, that basketry was one of the few articles from our forebears which was equally important to both men and women, the young and the old, and to the poor and the affluent. Baskets range from the biblical to basic, and everything in between. The art and craft of basket weaving have long represented a level of skill and usefulness that can hardly be overestimated. Basket weaving in Appalachia epitomizes both the height of the art and the worth of the craft. Appalachian basketry has a history rich in diversity and is one that reflects the blending of the many cultures that populated the region. The European immigrants who settled Appalachia brought with them skills from their homelands that became intertwined along with Native American influences, creating an all-American handicraft. The Appalachian peoples have learned to master the gathering, preparation, and construction of native materials in creating some of the most lasting and functional baskets in the nation. This mastery of methods and materials makes Appalachian basketry a matter of great national heritage and pride. Baskets played vital roles in the agrarian lifestyles of the Southern Highlands. Baskets were used for gathering, measuring, storing, and carrying. The Appalachian folk used large baskets for storing root crops and fruits. They toted, or carried, vegetables from harvest in specialized baskets and managed their valuably delicate eggs in another. The Appalachian people had baskets for picking berries, packing pies and chickens, picnicking, sewing, and keeping keys, to name a few. The versatility of the art of basketry, constant need for forms, and bottomless bounty of materials in the Appalachians combined to make an impressive array of crafts. The great variety of uses for baskets in the mountains was rivaled only by the vast diversity of influences that combined to create it. The European settlers of the southern Appalachians came in tow of the many varying crafts and skills of their homelands. Immigrants from Western Europe dominated the influx into the mountains, and the influence from the British Isles was particularly strong. Most Appalachian baskets can be traced to having some Scottish, English, or Irish roots. Appalachian basketry is often so similar to its forefathers' traditional forms that other than the change of materials, they are nearly identical. As author Sue Stevenson observed, the change of material from willow to white oak is almost the only difference apparent in the ribbed basket. Splint baskets made from copse-grown oak, ribbed with the identical tools and technology in use in the Appalachians, are still being made in Lancashire, England. Stevenson also notes that traditional ribbed willow baskets made in this style, along with the hen basket, the egg basket, and the round service basket, are the oldest baskets of the European immigrants in the United States. They continue to be made in the Appalachians with little alteration in their original forms, other than a change in material from willow to wooden splints. Other key European influences on Appalachian basketry came from Germany and the Netherlands. Much of the willow wickerwork and the only European-influenced coiling style of basketry found in the Appalachians, had German roots. Again, the only major differences in these forms were the switching from European willow sources and hazel rods to Appalachian willows and sturdy white oak rods. The Appalachian craftspeople have of course varied and personalized their own styles of basketry throughout the centuries. Many Appalachian families have very distinct and specific basket forms and creative markers of originality. The blending of the many European basketry forms in Appalachia created many new and interesting variations, but there is little denying the direct influence of the old ways. There is also little denying that the other influences on Appalachian basketry set it apart from the European standards and created a new and original craft. The most significant of these important influences was the marriage of methods to the time-honored Native American ways. Perhaps the greatest influence the Native Americans in Appalachia had on basketry was their use of natural dyes. Authors Law and Taylor note that the chief source of natural dyes for the Cherokee are bloodroot, butternut, black walnut, and yellowroot, along with pokeberries and walnut hulls. The Native Americans introduced beautifully colored and decorated baskets that featured traditional dyes, double weave techniques, and designs that varied according to area of residence. The colorful forms blended with the more natural and unadorned European ways to create beautiful new styles specific to Appalachia. The Native Americans also introduced many of the new weaving materials to Europeans that became standards of Appalachian basketry, including river cane, honeysuckle, and the coiled pine needle baskets. Perhaps the most defining element of Appalachian basketry is the use of the great white oak tree in splint-style basketry. The white oak is considered the finest of materials for Appalachian basketry, and many pieces have been found dating over a century old. The powerful lasting ability of the white oak flesh, paired with its tendency to have cleaner splitting qualities than any other species, makes it the king of materials for the craft. The mastery of white oak basketry is one that requires the study of an entire process, requiring numerous skills and vast knowledge. Author Alan H. Eaton explained, "The experienced basket maker knows where to find the tree and when the rising of the sap makes the time right to assure the best quality of strips and thongs to which he must reduce it. He has learned how to quarter the wood and subdivide the quarters to break right with the grain, and with the simple tools to work it into narrow, pliable, but durable strips. These, by methods as old as history, produces a basket that will hold together for years of hard use." White oak basket making was often a family affair in Appalachia. The baskets became so popular a commodity throughout the country that they were often used in trade at local general stores for groceries and other household supplies. White oak baskets were peddled off into the rest of the country or sold at stands by busy tourist attractions and stops in the South. The entire process of white oak basket making required so many steps, from harvest and preparation to the refining and weaving of the forms, that it required a well-functioning team. Families often made hundreds of baskets for trade or sale, and the knowledge of the basketry processes passed down from generation to generation. The ultimate assessment of Appalachian basketry is the mastery of the white oak twin-bottomed egg basket, also called the butt basket or gizzard basket. This form has become synonymous with Appalachian mastery. Author Sue Stevenson notes, Craft guilds of the past required a young man who had finished his apprenticeship to submit a piece of work for approval to the guild's examiners before a rank of master was conferred upon him. There are no specific directions for making it. The egg basket is literally designed while it is being made. A definitive piece of history in Appalachian basketry, and in all of Appalachian craftsmanship, was the movement to revive traditional handcrafts in the Southern Highlands after the onslaught of industrialization began to dwindle the traditional ways of life. Though the Industrial Revolution bypassed most of remote Appalachia, store-bought goods began to filter in and replace the handcrafted essentials. Only in isolated pockets did the crafts continue to be a way of life, and the overall craft culture was dangerously close to becoming extinct. The isolated Appalachians had thrived as artists of all handmade necessities until industry began to move in and store-bought goods began to replace them. This industrial change was coupled with a growing national interest in the Appalachian culture. The Appalachian people had been isolated from the rest of the country and had remained much more primitive and traditional. Many missionaries moved in to help guide the mountain people into a more modernized way of living while preserving the valuable skills they possessed for living off of and creating from the land. America saw in Appalachia a living picture of its past, and the rush to preserve these skills created a new interest and market for the traditional Appalachian crafts. Many missionaries helped develop avenues of production and promotion of mass quantities of these crafts, including basketry, to help bring extra incomes into the homes of the craftspeople. This movement gave way to the creation of many of the oldest craft schools and organizations in the South, such as the Southern Highland Craft Guild, Berea College, and the John C. Campbell Folk School, among many others. These organizations saw a value in the Appalachian crafts, not just for the masterful level of skills required in their creations, but also in the historical significance they held with our past. This push for preservation led to a passionate revival in Appalachian handcrafts, and its influence is felt even today. Appalachian basketry remains a valued and meaningful craft. Although the usefulness of basketry will always have a home amongst people, its pure necessity has lessened throughout the years. This, however, has opened the doors for more expressive and artistic exploration of the craft. Though there are many traditional basket makers staying true to form, there are also emerging artists reinterpreting these forms with exciting new expressions. Perhaps Appalachian basketry has moved more from a necessity to a luxury, but the level of skill, knowledge, and the dedication to creation remains the same. Appalachian baskets help communicate the history, transformations, and talents of the people. The interweaving of the influences that created this great American craft is a beautiful reflection of the intertwining of cultures that came together to make the Appalachian societies. These significant forms of interlaced history warrant great respect and national pride for being such wonderful representations of the diversity that formed our national fabric.